Welcome to the Top Secret Wedding Podcast, and our quick tip for today is to not just listen to the compliments you're getting, but also look at the things that you could be doing better, because people usually aren't going to reach out and tell you the little things that you could change.
Yeah, after every event, take a moment, review yourself, find something you can do better.
I like it. Let's go.
Okay, let's go.
This is the Top Secret Wedding Podcast, where we share top secret tips to help you take your wedding game to the next level.
I'm Annika, and I'm a wedding coordinator, enthusiast, and venue manager for one of the best venues in Idaho.
I'm Chris, and I'm a DJ, master of ceremonies, and all-around lover of weddings.
We're on a mission to improve weddings and wedding professionals everywhere.
So today we're talking about mistakes that we've made.
Yeah, mistakes that we've made that if we could go back and do it differently, we would do it differently.
Mm-hmm.
So I've got a list of a few of these that I think I would change. I'd like to hear yours first.
You want to hear my
first? Tell me the things that you would change.
Yeah, so I've got a little list here of things I would change. Starting off strong with the number one thing I hate. Double bookings.
Oh.
Literally the worst thing ever.
I get nervous when I hear that.
Oh, even me thinking on it, I just feel sick to my stomach.
Yeah.
I'm just like, it's very rare, but it has happened. I strive for it to never happen again because it's literally the worst thing ever. But, yeah.
I remember I had one day where I was looking at my bookings coming up, and I realized, oh shoot, I've double booked myself.
Uh-huh.
And then I looked again and I realized, oh shoot, I've triple booked myself.
Stop.
Yeah.
No.
We figured it out.
Yeah. Yeah.
I've never had to cancel on a client because I've double booked. But have you?
Well, my situation's a little different because it's a venue. You can't have two weddings going on.
No
so,
way.
I mean, there was one situation where we did have to cancel someone.
Oh, that hurts.
And yeah, it was painful. And it wasn't a wedding, it was a reunion. We double booked a reunion, so it was a week-long stay. And we had to swallow our pride, offer them as much as we could.
Yeah.
And it was yucky. Yep.
Yeah, her notes say double bookings, in parentheses, literally the worst thing ever.
They are.
I agree with that.
They are. Anytime I am always on our calendar, triple checking, because it just brings so much anxiety to me, and we just can't double book. I can't handle it. So
for a little while in my booking system, if you marked the event as being all day, it wouldn't show up on the calendar.
Stop.
And so there were a few times that I had to like triple check in like three places to make sure. So yeah.
I think most times, so where our issues come in with double bookings, it's not us actually double booking ourselves. It's us not updating our Airbnb or Vrbo calendar and an instant booking coming through. So that's where I am so on top of it. Like, we have to keep these updated, and I check them weekly because that's the worst. If someone books, you just booked a wedding, but you didn't block it on Airbnb, and then the next day someone books Airbnb, and you're like, we can't, Sometimes I think Airbnb, you can like pre-approve or decline, but I think it's Vrbo, they can do an instant booking. And I kid you not, you would think if I saw an email about you just got an instant booking, I'd be excited. My stomach drops, and I have to double, triple check that nothing else is booked.
Yeah.
And so it's been better, but
wow,
they're literally the worst thing ever.
Yeah, so it makes me nervous. Can we move on to the next one?
Yeah.
I'm getting anxious.
So as a venue, one of my mistakes is a lack of communication with additional tents. We provide a 20 by 40 and 20 by 20 foot tent.
Yeah.
But mistakes we have made is not communicating about tents. Okay. And so if a couple is wanting to bring in an additional tent, it doesn't just affect that one day. It affects the whole week.
Sure.
Because the tent company has to come and set up the tent, and that takes about a whole day. And then there's taking it down.
And you guys have to move your tents depending on the size.
Yeah. So, I mean, even, just this last season, we had a tent come in and it was great, but the entire summer, we have to move our tent around so it doesn't kill the grass.
Right.
So our entire summer had to be planned around this tent on this one weekend so that our tent could be the right place.
That big tent.
Yes. Yeah. Yes. Yep. And yeah, so I would do that again. And, we've implemented new systems and it's better now, but that's a mistake I've made.
Yeah.
So.
Okay. That's good.
Also not having a clear tent policy. We now have one.
So what does that include?
So that policy includes that if the couple wants to bring in an additional tent, they have to submit a written proposal and it has to be approved.
Okay.
So if it's not written and approved, then there's no guarantee for it. That comes into play because, again, tents, they take a day to set up and then the day of the event and then take down. And some people don't take tents down on the weekend, which is funny to me because it's event business. But sidebar. But what happens if we have a wedding on Thursday and then one Friday?
Right.
So it all just domino effects together. But yeah, so we have that policy now in place and that helps. So,
yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
So, and with that policy, if a couple is booking, like if they have a tent they're bringing in, it's on our calendar. So if there's someone interested in another wedding that falls in that span of where it's going to be, we tell them there's going to be this tent there. If you want to book this date, it's non-negotiable.
Right.
So.
Which for most couples probably would be a benefit.
Most times it's a benefit. Yeah, they want that. The only time it's not is if it's this massive tent and they're only expecting 40 people, then it's not a benefit.
Sure.
But most times it's a benefit. So,
okay.
Another mistake of myself is being too relaxed with staff. I have learned and grown, but I like to be liked.
Me too.
I want to be
I'm a people pleaser.
Yeah. And so I've made mistakes where I'm too relaxed with staff and I say, oh no, it's fine. It's fine. And it's not.
Can you give some examples?
I think just little things like, it's always the little things. Those are what are easier to get persuaded on, But even just something as simple as, hey, I need a blog post to be written by the end of this week. And then
Gotcha. And letting it go.
Oh, I didn't get to it. Can I? Oh, I didn't get to it this week either. Oh, it's okay. Like, you need to just say, no, like, it's due. I need it by this date. And you need to follow through with what you say.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, I have that problem too.
Also, mistake of myself, not following through with policies. Due dates, alcohol policy, tent policy, etc. The one I can think of is due dates. We have a policy of when everything is due. Yet again, you want to be a people pleaser. You want to be liked. And you go, oh, that's okay. It's not okay. You just need to stick to your boundaries and say it's due. And with that too, you need to have a consequence for that. For the longest time, we had a due date with needs to be due by this date.
Yeah.
But we didn't have a consequence. And so where's the incentive? It was like, hey, it's due by this date. That date has now passed and there's no consequence.
Right.
So we've now implemented a consequence.
I was reading a book or listening to a book. I don't remember who it was by, probably Malcolm Gladwell or somebody like that. And he talked about this daycare that they charged I think it was like a $20 late pickup fee.
Yeah.
And they thought that would be a deterrent. Well, in fact, people saw it the opposite way. They're like, I can pay only $20 and pick up my kid late.
Yeah.
Okay, no problem. So it has to be painful enough that people are like, I don't want to.
No, exactly. Well, I think that's the thing too, is with a different policy, we implemented a consequence, but again, it wasn't really a consequence. People were looking at it as an opportunity.
Sure.
And so you've got to make sure it's a consequence, Yeah. So.
Which is hard when they're your clients.
It's a balance.
They're giving you money, but yeah.
Next one that I have is not being completely mentally prepared before a wedding.
Oh.
I've made that mistake and it eats at me, but just
like not being in the moment or like.
Just not being in the moment. So it was actually when I worked on with you. I ate myself up after it for it.
Okay.
But just being there working, but
Yeah.
not actually like mentally being there. I wasn't giving my best performance for my job.
I know the one you're talking about, just because there's only one that we worked on lately.
Right.
But I understand what you're saying, but I didn't see it at all.
That's good. That makes me feel better.
Yeah.
But I knew I wasn't giving my best. And, that's mistakes I think we've all made at some point. And I mean,
For them, it's their only day. And when you care as much as we care about these things.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Usually I'm so good about it's so silly, but I'll give myself a pep talk the day of a wedding. Or even if it's not my wedding, if I'm going to go check on my staff, I have to give myself this pep talk okay, you're leaving reality away. This is so-and-so's wedding day. You're going to go check and you are there. You are at this wedding. Everything else doesn't matter,
Yeah.
So.
That's good.
Yeah.
Positive self-talk.
Positive self-talk.
Yeah.
And then the last one I have on my list is not trusting my staff. That's mistakes I've made. I've learned. But you need to have the trust that what you've done, you've taught them, it's going to sound cheesy, but it's time to let them fly. You need to trust them. If you're micromanaging them, you're just damaging yourself and your staff. And not only are you, you're just damaging that trust. If you don't trust them, they're not going to trust themselves. I mean, even a couple episodes ago when we had the interns on here, and they mentioned, because Annika and Becca had trust in us, we had trust in ourselves.
Yeah.
But if you don't trust them, what makes you think they're going to trust themselves?
Right.
So.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, there was a quote that I heard years ago, and it was something like, treat a man as you think he will be, and he'll become that, or something like that.
Yeah. No, exactly. So I know this year, 2022, has been a lot of growth for me with trusting my staff. This is the first year we've hired an assistant manager.
Yeah.
And he's done amazing. We'll get him on here sometime. But that was a huge trusting step for me because it was okay, we've never had this before.
Yeah.
But allowing him to excel and like you just said, treating him as who I want him to be, he's excelled. He's done great.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. So.
He's done good. So.
Yeah. Those are good.
I want to hear yours.
Okay, so these look more, I don't know how to describe it, but the first one is not having backup, whether it's physical backups or digital backups. So that's like not having a backup of the music, not having a backup laptop, not having a backup speaker. There have been a few times where I didn't have a backup and I had to figure it out.
Yeah.
And if you have a backup, that's just not something you have to worry about.
Yeah, it's just there. It's backed up.
And that's not to say that you have to have copies of every single thing. Like you need 2 of the highest quality speaker. Like as long as you have something, most clients aren't going to realize that there's a difference. But as long as you have something that can get you through the job and still provide the service that you promised. Yeah. And long ago, probably 20 years ago, I had a hard drive crash, lost all the music.
No.
So now I have copies. I probably have, I don't know, somewhere 10 copies of everything in various places, online and laptops. Yeah. So, yeah. So the next one is kind of a business one, not having separate bank accounts.
Yeah. It's important.
When you're a solopreneur, you're running a small business, as an LLC, you have to have one. But yeah, if you're running a business just by yourself, set up a separate bank account. Most banks, you can set it up for free.
Yeah.
And you just have to have like a minimum amount in there. But it makes it much easier to kind of track what you're doing as far as business goes. And it helps you kind of be a little bit more discerning about what you're spending. My preferred method of accounting it's called Profit First.
Okay.
Put a little plug-in for that book. It's a really, really, it's a much easier way of running a small business to make sure that you, the basic idea is if you have $100,000 to run your business, you're going to spend $100,000.
Mm-hmm.
But if you have $50,000, you're going to run it with $50,000. So take the profit out first and make sure that you're profitable first. And then,
I like that concept.
yeah. So, and it requires having different bank accounts for stuff. So we can talk about that another time, but set up a separate bank account. It's an easy thing to do. Just do it. My next one is not asking for reviews. And that doesn't mean that if you think you did a bad job, that you have to go ask this person for a review, even though they're going to leave a bad one. If at the very least, ask for feedback from your clients.
Totally.
Make sure that you're trying to improve at every event. If not, you're going to get bored. I would get bored.
When do you ask for reviews?
Yeah. So I ask for reviews within a week to a month after. Obviously, with some vendors, you can't do that. Like a photographer, you need processing time, videographer, processing time. But yeah, I try and ask within a week. If you do it like the next day, they're probably going to be on their honeymoon.
Yep, totally.
Gotta wait. And you should ask for it multiple times. You should ask for a review multiple times. And you got to figure out a way to word that. But sometimes people they want to leave a review. They forget.
Agreed.
Yeah. My next mistake that I made is trusting the wrong people.
Talk about that a little more.
Yeah. So years ago, I had a wedding where I had a friend that was going to drive me, and the wedding was over an hour away. I planned for the right time to leave, and then I looked at my time and I realized it wasn't the right time to leave. It was an hour too late to leave.
Oh no.
And then my friend was an hour after that to pick me up. So we were setting up in the middle of the reception, which was awful. And they didn't have a ceremony that day, that another day, but so you got to know who you're working with and make sure that you can trust them.
Totally.
Yeah, trusting the wrong people. That's a skill that you got to learn. And if you're not good at picking people, find somebody who is good at picking people. For me, it's my wife. She's
great.
She's good at picking people. Well, she picked me, so I don't know. Okay, so my next one is not using contracts. I use a contract for everything, but there was one time I didn't use a contract for equipment, and it got stolen.
And it got stolen.
Never gave it back. Still battling that, but just use a contract. It
doesn't have to be crazy. Just something simple. Get the job done. Use a contract.
Yeah, and in my mind, it's not even. Most of the time, it's not even about being able to enforce that contract. It's that there's a contract to enforce.
Yeah.
So the person that is signing the contract on the other side, they can be like, well, he's got a contract, so I don't want to mess this up.
Exactly.
Even if you don't enforce it. So.
Yep. Agreed.
Not protecting my gear. I mean, this is a simple one, but man, I've said it many times to a lot of my colleagues. If I didn't have to buy cases for my gear, I could buy a whole lot more gear. It costs so much. I just bought some new speakers, and the covers and all the protection for them, it's like $500 for just that.
Wow.
So expensive, but that protects my gear.
Yeah.
So important.
It's kind of funny. My husband and I, we were just talking about this in the sense of phones, and hey, you just spent $1,000 on a new phone. Oh, but you don't want to get the case or the little screen protector. And it's like, okay, I know it's more money, but you got to protect the phone, man. Gotta protect your equipment.
Exactly. People that walk around without cases on their phones,
I can't trust them.
Man,
just
who
kidding.
are these people? Living on the edge.
Well, even I just got a new laptop. And I ordered a case and it was delayed. And I was walking with it so precious.
Yeah.
I was just I just spent so much on this and there's no protection,
Yeah. Protect your gear.
Protect your gear.
Yep. And then my last mistake that not the only one, but the only other one I'm going to share here, is not checking in with all the necessary parties involved. There have been many times where I thought I've checked with everybody, the photographer, the venue, whatever, and then there was one person that I didn't check with, and it turns out that they threw a big wrench into the mix.
Oh.
And so just making sure that you're, and sometimes this is unavoidable because there's an aunt that
Totally.
thinks they're in charge and they screw things up. That's not always the case, but just trying to check with all necessary parties and trying to understand who the necessary parties are. Yeah, I don't have any specifics that I'll share about that because I don't want to throw anybody under the bus, but
Totally.
just make sure that you're checking with all the necessary parties, whether it's, on a micro scale for a first dance or a macro scale for a whole wedding. It can really just help you avoid unnecessary problems.
Agreed.
So, yeah. Those are the mistakes that we've made. There are probably many more that at least that I'll make.
For sure.
But
Me too, not just you.
Okay. All right. Yeah, for sure. You will make more mistakes.
For sure.
Yeah. But hopefully you can learn from these. And we'll see you on the next podcast.
See you next time.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Top Secret Wedding Podcast.
Subscribe, rate, and review us, and we'll see you next time.